Chicago, 1908. Sprawling along the coastline of Lake Michigan, the Windy City was the second largest city in the United States and the most important railroad hub on the continent. It was the center of American industry, specializing in steel, machinery, meatpacking, and finance. Think about this time period for a moment. 1908 was the year that the Ford Model T was introduced, so automobiles were brand new. Chicago's first transition to electric street lighting was well underway, driven by technological advancements and the city's rapid urbanization. But there were not yet radios everywhere. Chicago blues was not yet a thing. Picture electric streetcars alongside horses and wagons, ragtime music, blue-collar workers, the smoke and churn of industry, the clack and rattle of the elevated train around the loop. Out of this early 20th century bustle, reaching just over 300 feet high, stood what must have been an iconic part of Chicago's skyline. Once its tallest skyscraper, the Masonic Temple. At 21 stories tall, it was impressively tall for its time. Designed by architectural firm Burnham & Root, the Masonic Temple was built in 1892 and remained an iconic building in the Loop area of Chicago until its demolition in 1939. It housed 9 stories of shops and offices, rented commercial space, with the upper floors reserved for the Freemasons. And this is where our story takes place, because it's in one of these commercial spaces, somewhere in the bottom 9 floors of the Masonic Temple, that a small publishing house called the Yogi Publication Society had its home. This is where the nightmare of Hermes Trismegistus truly began. Now let us turn our attention to William Walker Atkinson, the owner and chief editor of the Yogi Publication Society. By the turn of the 20th century, Atkinson began contributing to the New Thought movement by publishing articles, essays, and eventually books. These writings explored the themes of mental power, concentration, and the law of attraction. His writings remain cornerstones in New Thought literature, unfortunately continuing to influence countless readers, occultists, seekers, and authors. New Thought was not limited to mystical and spiritual exploration. It was a significant contributor to a number of other movements, such as Christian Science, salesmanship, and personal success. Atkinson was particularly active and influential in the field of salesmanship, and his book, The Art of Salesmanship, offered practical advice that merged traditional sales techniques with New Thought principles, promoting the idea that success is heavily influenced by the attitude and mental state of the salesperson. In addition to his writing, Atkinson played a pivotal role in New Thought publishing. He edited magazines like New Thought and Advanced Thought, creating platforms that disseminated New Thought ideas to a wider audience, both helping to connect like-minded thinkers and cement New Thought as one of the most successful homegrown American religious movements. Atkinson loved to repackage the same New Thought material under different pseudonyms. Some of these pen names that he used were Yogi Ramacharaka, Theron Q. Dumont, Swami Bhakta Vishita, and Magnus Incognito. However, the nom de guerre that proved to be the most insidious, the longest lasting, and the most exasperating was the 3 Initiates. Yes, that is correct. William Walker Atkinson wrote the Cabalian. The Cabalian claims to reveal the secret teachings of Hermetic philosophy, those ancient mystical principles communicated by Hermes Trismegistus himself. The book lays down 7 so-called Hermetic principles, which are supposed to explain everything to why your toast always lands butter side down, to the secrets of the universe, all wrapped in a package that's just vague enough to feel profound. The Cabalian presents its principle of gender through a rigid binary lens, which is not only flawed and outdated in light of current scientific understanding of sex and reproduction, but also exclusionary and disconnected from modern inclusive perspectives on gender identity. Possibly the cherry on top is the lavish praise that the cabalian heaps upon Herbert Spencer, grounding its philosophical approach in his ideas with a reverential tone by claiming that Spencer was a reincarnation of Greek philosopher Heraclitus. This overlooks the contentious aspects of Spencer's work, particularly his application of survival of the fittest to societies, which laid groundwork for social Darwinism, a doctrine used to justify inequality, social hierarchies, and even eugenics. By aligning with Spencer, the cabalian not only dates itself, but also fails to consider the moral and ethical controversies surrounding his negative influence on socio-political thought. If you are new to occult philosophy, diving into the cabalian might make you feel like you're on the brink of a great cosmic secret, but more often than not, you're just left wondering if you've been philosophically bamboozled. Yet, somehow, inexplicably, this book remains beloved by a surprising number of spiritual seekers and mystics who swear by its timeless wisdom. If talking about the cabalian makes me sound cynical, it's because I've had to deal with its Hermetic delusions for decades. Its false claims and thinly veiled New Thought bullcrap somehow continue to ensnare occultists and theurgists who really ought to know better. So much of the cabalian falls apart with even a tiny bit of close reading that it always catches me by surprise when another cabalianista pops up. For the past few years, I have been one of the moderators on the popular Discord server Hermetic House of Life, or HHoL for short. The server focuses on facilitating discussions regarding Hermeticism and topics related to Hermetic philosophy, such as magic, astrology, Neoplatonism, and Gnosticism. We have a thriving community of about 3,000 users, and the discussions tend to be pretty high quality, I think. However, rarely does a week go by when a new user joins and immediately asks about the cabalian. This has become such a predictable occurrence that we created macros to inform users that the cabalian is not Hermetic. In spite of the frequent cabalian interruptions, HHoL has flourished. One of our shining stars is a channel devoted to weekly topics pulled from various Hermetic texts, run by fellow moderator Sam Block. Now, Sam is primarily known for running the Digital Ambler website, which you have probably heard of if you've made it this far. And it's definitely going to be linked in the show notes. So, I was pretty baffled, when Sam recently announced, presumably as a lark, that he was going to launch a weekly cabalian discussion channel on our server, on HHoL. Sam was serious. I thought it was a bluff, but we now have a weekly cabalian discussion channel. So, Sam is a dear friend of mine, and when dear friends show signs of encroaching madness, all you can really do is confront them and try to find out if they are being coerced by forces beyond their control. So the only thing I could really do was call him up. Tell me a little bit about the Hermetic House of Life Discord server. I mean, don't tell me, tell the audience. I already know what it is, but the audience may not be aware of what...
How do you know about it?
Well, gosh, I've been there from the beginning.
You actually have, yes. So the Hermetic House of Life Discord server is a Discord server that talks about Hermeticism and Western esotericism. We have a website, hermetichouseflife.wordpress.com, and we're open to everyone. You know, just join the discussions. We've been around since January 2022,
and we're huge. We have like 3,000 members.
We're like mid-size.
That's
in terms of like the broader Discord ecosystem. We're not that.
Well,
big.
I mean, I'm not going to compare us to the Discord ecosystem, but what about like the occult discussion group ecosystem? We're a really.
I don't think we're
big. It's a lot of people.
We have a good size.
Yeah.
We have a good crew, and that's what I'm content with.
And I mean,
we focus on quality over quantity.
We do, and it's a fairly niche topic. You know, I mean, we spend a lot of time focusing on classical Hermeticism. And I mean, even like the weekly astrology channel tends to focus on like classical astrology stuff. Like we don't go for, it's not like we're just sort of, dime store Hermeticists. We're like dollar store Hermeticists.
We're like the mid-grade grocery store. We're like the Publix.
Yeah, I suppose. But I mean, at the same time, do you think there's anybody on the planet who has written as much about classical Hermeticism as you have in terms of word count?
Yeah,
Who?
actual scholars who actually have like a publish and perish kind of deal.
No, I mean but
I write for fun.
You do, but you write a lot, and I mean, anyhow. But I feel like over the last couple of years, we've really managed to create like a really cool community. Like it's awesome, and you know, of course, as with any sort of public open community, we have problems every once in a while. So every once in a while, we get visited by like neo-Nazis or fascists or something like that. And then sometimes we get visited by what I like to think of as the cabalianauts, who
God save us all.
who show up and they are so convinced that the cabalian is hermetic. I mean, it honestly, it doesn't happen as often as it used to, but so often.
And like, it's also like, I don't, as obnoxious as they can be,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's not their fault. You know, they've been lied to. You know, they've been beguiled and tricked. So like, and like then like everyone else on the planet, like that's part of the Cabalian's issue. It has great marketing.
It does.
It's just a giant farce.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, like the great marketing of the Cabalian really is, I think, a testament to William Walker Atkinson's success in salesmanship. Like he did it. He basically like ascended. He's like the Buddha of salesmanship or whatever.
Why would you disrespect the Buddha like that?
I'm sorry, Buddha. But he totally did it, right? Like everybody believes what he said, no matter what. But it ends up being like a really annoying problem, the repeated problem with the Cabalian, and none of us really enjoy talking about it. None of us really enjoy having to debunk it over and over and over again. So, Sam, I just really want to know, what the hell were you thinking? A weekly Cabalian discussion group on Hermetic House of Life? Why?
Okay, all right, okay. So for backstory here, one of the things I'm known for, besides being unremittingly boring, obviously, one of the main things I'm known for is my continued disdain and arguing against the Cabalian as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a Hermeticist, you know, I focus on, you know, Hermetic texts, Hermetic practice, Hermetic doctrine, Hermetic theories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I work in a Hermetic worldview. I do Hermetic rituals. And, you know, this requires me, rather understandably, to go to Hermetic texts in order to study them and develop them and practice from them. And none of these include the Cabalian, thank God. You know, the Corpus Hermeticum, the Asclepius, you know, the definitions of Hermeticus to Asclepius, the Stobine Hermetic fragments, the Oxford fragments, the Vienna fragments, various excerpts, the Discourse 8th and 9th, the Nag Hammadi Codices. You know, we have a abundance of Hermetic texts available to us. And if you were to only read the Cabalian, you know, because it says it's Hermetic, you would not at all know any of the things that are taught in any of the actual Hermetic texts. You know, the Cabalian was written
Except
in
for that one
1908.
line. There is
Yes,
one
except
line.
for that one line that it paraphrased the Emerald Tablet, and it still doesn't cite the Emerald Tablet. It cites its own self. So the Cabalian markets itself as being, oh, hold on, let me get the actual subtitle for this awful book. You know, it's the Cabalian written by the three initiates, aka William Walker Atkinson, who was writing under a pen name, as he writes under another 24 other pen names. The Cabalian, a study of the Hermetic philosophy of ancient Egypt and Greece. Now, the Cabalian has for me, it's only 34,000 words. It uses the word Egypt or Egyptian about 20 times. It doesn't actually talk about Egypt.
No.
It talks about Greece even less.
Yeah.
You know, it used the word Greece or Greek maybe 5 times, and one of those is just about etymology. So, like, it doesn't actually discuss anything from Egypt. It's not so much Egyptian as it is Egyptomaniacal. Because we know that Egyptomania. Well, Egyptomania was an actual thing,
right,
you know, in the early 20th century, you know, with the spread of Egyptian archaeology and research the pyramids and the pharaohs, history in that way. And that's why you see all these old style movie theaters that look like Egyptian temples. That's why you have so much of an Egyptian trend in Art Deco art of the time, or even Art Nouveau art of the time. It was why it was so influential in so many architectural and artistic movements from the early 20th century. Egyptomania was a real thing. So the Cabalion kind of taps into that, along with tapping into the more pervasive, popular notion of what Hermetic stuff is. Basically using it as an empty signifier devoid of any actual substance, and instead only focusing on content.
Yeah.
So because it's gotten so popular, people read the Cabalion and like, oh, it says Hermetic, therefore it must be Hermetic. As if no book has ever lied on its title page before, or ever tried to present itself as something other than it is.
I mean, it's almost like people are unfamiliar with how advertising works. Like they're the ones who watch like the Frosted Flakes commercial, and they're like, oh, this is part of a complete breakfast. Along with the 2,000 calories of healthy food sitting next to it.
So, one of the reasons back on the Hermetic House of Life, and as well as its predecessor server, the Hermetic Agora, we decided to do a weekly Hermetica discussion group where every week we would look at a different Hermetic text. Maybe this week we'll look at, this book of the Corpus Hermeticum, or this section of the Asclepius, or this batch of sayings from the definitions. And we would go through the text one by one, and earlier this year we finished another round of the classical Hermetic text, as well as a couple other ones as well. We also gone over the Sentence of Sextus, the Picatrix, a whole bunch of other texts as well. And so in the mod chat, where I'm a moderator and a couple other moderators, like you, Eric.
Oh yeah, is that me?
We have this idea of doing like April Fool's jokes, and we've done April Fool's jokes this year before. Like we'll change all the channel names to be something stupid, or we'll just change people's colors, the roll colors, randomly. And it's been a while since we've done April Fool's joke, and so we were thinking about doing like a weekly Cabalion group as like a joke. And then, because I have a gene in my makeup that makes you take things too far, I actually started thinking about this. And like, you know what? Now that we've actually gone through all the Hermetic texts, now that I've given my commentary and walkthrough of all the ideas in the Hermetic text, and people actually are familiar with them, not just the the more popular ones like the Corpus Hermeticum Asclepius, like all the individual Stobaean fragments, the Kore Cosmu, the Oxford Hermetica, people don't often hear about. People actually have a good grounding understanding what's in the Hermetic text, which makes them even better at pointing out what's not Hermetic. Like the Cabalion.
Right.
But not just that the Cabalion isn't Hermetic, but specifically how and why it's not Hermetic.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about like this weekly group, like that actually would be a good idea, and I will hate every second of it. So hi, I'm Boo Boo the Fool. I started the weekly Cabalion discussion group just yesterday on my birthday week, as if I needed this headache. This is my gift to you all. I hope you enjoy my suffering.
Oh man.
I do want people to actually read the Cabalion, because like a lot of people have read the Cabalion. Like that is a statement. That's
true.
True
it's very
statement.
true.
But a lot of people tend to have read it like once many years ago, and then like never really read it again. And because they've read it so long, they're so early in their spiritual stuff, they have a very sentimental, fond memory of it, and maybe attribute more to it than it actually warrants. Other people haven't read the Cabalion, those blessed cherished few.
Oh man.
May God protect their souls forever from all kinds of affliction.
Ignorance truly can be bliss.
Getting people to read the actual text as it is, and not just some sort of wishy-washy light reading. Oh, I find this so meaningful. No, like actually critically read it. Just how he read the Hermetic text critically and thought about them critically, diving into what does this word mean in this context? How do we compare and contrast it to other contexts which is used? How do we translate it? How do we reconcile with other issues in the Hermetic texts? Actually critically reading the Cabalion is, I think, not a lot of people actually do. In fact, I don't think most people get past chapter 2. And they'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Like that's because that's chapter that introduces the 7 Hermetic principles.
And then they just
and
ditch
they
it.
kind of just
Yeah.
like they'll then make bad YouTube videos of AI slop art being posted with a voiceover of the Hermetic principles, and like that's most people's exposure to cabalian.
Oh, I mean, that's definitely how I started this video, for instance.
Oh, good. I'm glad to have sinned with you. Just getting people to talk about how have they encountered the book, what are their thoughts about it, how has it been presented to them. We're not even actually talking about the content of the book yet. So like people are like sharing like I said, like spoilers.
Yeah,
for, like,
yeah.
My own jokes I want to make later on.
I mean, they're jumping ahead
weeks.
a ton. I mean, they got into what was it? Henry Spencer's. Yeah, I know his gag-worthy evolutionary Darwinism sort of stuff.
Literally
Social
Darwinism.
Yeah, William Walker Atkinson loves that guy. Like he just praises him. There's like a paragraphs talking about how cool that is.
How he's a reincarnation of, was it Herodotus? No,
Heraclitus.
Empedocles? Heraclitus.
Yeah. The thing is, the Cabalian's not super long.
No.
So it's easy to find all of these spoilers, and it's easy to come across like all of this just ridiculous stuff. But it's going to be really strange going through this and watching people who maybe haven't looked at the Cabalian for a long time have their like revelations like, oh shit, this isn't Hermetic.
Or like just realize how much of an unmitigated mental health disaster the cabalian is. Like it's actually damaging to people's well-being.
I mean, New Thought has that sort of fundamental horribleness about it, where it's like everything that happens to you is because of your visualizations.
Tell us about New Thought, Eric, because you know more about this subject than I do, regrettably, for your sake.
Okay. I mean, New Thought is basically an American religious movement that started in the 19th century. I mean, I think that there are parts of it that were probably influenced by spiritualism and parts of it that were kind of influenced by theosophy. And also, like, it sort of shares... In fact, I think Christian Science is usually referred to as part of the New Thought movement. But the New Thought movement that turned into the stuff that like, the Cabalian is a part of is almost kind of like... old new atheism, sort of. Like it's not always really fond of the idea of a theistic world, but it is fond of this concept that like your own vision of the universe is what creates the universe. That the mind is the mind is the most powerful thing. And it's where prosperity gospel comes from. It's where self-help comes from. Sort of. Self-help has a more complicated origin story than that. But it's also where salesmanship comes from, like all of those old tropes of like vacuum cleaner salesmen dumping dirt on your floor, or door-to-door salesmen selling Bibles and encyclopedias. Like all of that is straight out of New Thought. And it's sort of crazy how that kind of like branched out into so many parts of American life. Like I would say that New Thought is so interwoven with the United States culture that it's kind of it's embedded in Americanism right now, which kind of means that the Cabalian is like America's Bible.
I hate every word of that.
But can you dispute it? I mean, I don't like it. I'm not happy about it. We've basically like taken Calvinism and then piled Legos on top of it until everything fell over, and then we're like, oh, look at this one Lego, and we're like, it's the worst one.
I regret every word you just said because you said it. Mm-hmm. My ears had to be afflicted with it all. But you're right. Like,
I mean,
and that's what the Cabalian really demonstrates.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much, because your mind constructs your own reality. If you're poor, it's your fault. Just stop thinking poor. If you're sad, just stop being sad. Be happy instead. That's literally the advice in the Cabalian.
Is that all?
Yes. Like, I'm joking. Like, yes.
I'm going to do that right now.
And like the Cabalian is often marketed, and I say marketed like jokingly and not, as a book on esotericism, a beginner's book on esotericism perhaps, but still an esoteric book. And it's not really that. It's, as you said, it's a self-help book.
It is. And
even then, it's a shitty self-help book. Like, it's not good. There's better books even back then.
Yeah.
Much more better than that today.
Oh, for sure.
And, like,
for sure. Yeah.
So like it doesn't deserve being printed. It doesn't deserve the electrons used to print it on screens even. Like, it doesn't.
Oh, I totally agree.
It's not good.
You know, one of the tragedies of the Cabalian, like, you know, it's a huge success commercially. You know, I mean, it sold more copies than any other book on the occult, any other esoteric book. Like, even if you took like 3 books of occult philosophy and counted all of the counterfeit versions of it, it still wouldn't sell like even half as many as the Cabalian.
And that had like a 300-year head start too.
I know. Well, the thing that's really sad about it is that the William Walker Atkinson's family didn't manage to keep the copyrights to all of his work. So even though the Cabalian has, you know, successfully, you know, been sold and resold and republished many, many, many times over the 20th and 21st centuries, the Atkinson family never saw any of that money. They should have gotten rich. William Walker Atkinson only halfway succeeded in his masterful salesmanship spell.
I mean, this is yet more evidence that people who like read and take the Cabalion seriously end up getting brainworms, like including William Walker Atkinson himself. Like,
yeah. So the final question is, will you invite everybody to join us in our discussion?
Yes, I want you to suffer with me because I refuse to suffer alone. I want you to engage this discussion fairly, maybe not nicely, but fairly, you know, to really soak in how awful this book is and how you can do better.
There'll be a link.
Does that work?
Yeah, I'm gonna put the invite link to the Hermetic House of Life Discord in the notes, and we can do the pointing thing. Where like, look down there. Yeah.
Or like, I guess here. I don't know how this platform will point like where's the box going to happen.
Oh God, that's a really good question. I don't know.